like to welcome y'all here today. For those that don't know who I am, my wife and I, when Christina, but I still call her Tina, when her mom moved from Iowa, Christina was a singer, and she wanted to graduate from Iowa. So she lived with Elaine and I. Elaine and I already had 3 girls. I don't know if you guys have ever went through that before. I was the only man, and there was 5 women in 1 bathroom.
That's why you lived in Iowa, so you could go outside.
If I need to call a class, a family get together, all I had to do was go in the bathroom and shut the door. Within 1 minute, they're already knocking. You through in there yet? So it's a trying time. I don't know if you can hear that well or not. I'm kind of reminded when LBJ was president, they had a big state function, and he asked his press secretary, which was Pierre Salinger, to word the banks. So he prayed, and when he got through, LBJ looked at him and said, "Pierre, I didn't hear you." And without batting an eye, Pierre said, "All due respect, Mr. President, I wasn't talking to you." So you might have trouble hearing me, but with all due respect, I'm not talking to y'all. I'm talking to the one that we all love, and that's God Himself. Let's pray together. Father God in heaven, we thank you for today. Father, we come here telling you that we love you. We know that you love us. Father, it's just great to get to talk with you from time to time. Forgive us when we don't talk to you enough. Father, when we're talking to you, although with all the turmoil and everything all over the world, that you still hear us. We speak with you. And that's an awesome feeling. Father, be with us today, and remember this loved one. Be with Tina. She shares things about her mom with us. Father, we wouldn't forget to pray for our nation. Father, bless with the leaders of our nation, fighting men that protect us every day of our life. Give each one of us traveling mercies as we return to our homes. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, thank you for attending. We're here to celebrate Lee Peterson, and it's great to see familiar faces here, and family that I haven't met yet, so I'm excited to meet each and every one of you today. And I've got my script. Of course, if Lee was here, she would expect me to be off book, but I'm not. So. Lee was a Texas girl who became a powerhouse and icon in the talent industry. Her childhood was spent in Livingston, Texas, mainly. She told me before it was turned into a lake, though she wanted to tell me that. Her family would eventually move to Houston. She was the eldest of 5, and she grew up with 3 other sisters. Her younger brother came a bit later. Someone told me it was 4 girls at war. You see, I have a daughter, and I cannot imagine an atmosphere where 4 expressive young women are under the same roof. Her parents were East Texas country, and the children were taught values and a strong work ethic. Lee was born Shirley, but somehow the name Shirley didn't fit. Well, maybe when she was a little girl growing up with milk cows, crops, fruit, pecan trees, it was where she developed her love for anything Texas and the simple things of life. She enjoyed singing in the choir, swimming, animals, and she loved to read. I was told that when she was 10 years old, that she had to get permission from a local librarian to read chapter books because she had read most of the children's titles. But she wanted to know more about the world. Lee was gifted. When she was a teen, she used her babysitting money to purchase a coveted rabbit jacket. It was one of the first signs of a developing eye for fashion. At an early age, she learned how to work and for what she wanted out of life. She was drawn to anything artistic. Being highly creative, Christina, her daughter, tells me that she grew up in a home full of music, drawing, painting, macrame, and even jewelry design. Lee had a natural flair for decorating and color, and as a single mom, she worked for a custom home builder, helping with decor and sales. Really, it was her business and sales experience combined with that creative style and flair that led her to the entertainment industry. You see, Lee was also a trendsetter. In the 80s, she helped establish Pastor Lee Peterson Talent Agency in Uptown Houston, where she made a name for herself as an agent, and eventually she segued into talent management. In fact, she was a pioneer in the field. She believed Texas talent only needed a chance to show Los Angeles what we were made of. She was one of the first agents that pitched Texas to actors to major television and film projects. She believed in Texas and worked with talent. She loved it. With her signature determination, she began to coach and develop and became one of the state's first talent managers, which it's a feat today that's still impressive. Lee was a force. She found out real quickly that those Hollywood agents, casting directors and execs, wouldn't return Shirley's calls, even though her deep, raspy Texas voice was a bit imposing. So Shirley became simply Lee. The change in name opened new doors as Hollywood moguls had to answer to this formidable phone voice from Texas. They never really knew, was it a man or a woman with an odd throat impediment? Yes, it was her fortitude and her bark that demanded attention. But don't let the gruff voice fool you. She was also a lady. She loved fashion, the arts, high heels and pearls, and perfectly suited for the industry. She could grace a red carpet, but let me tell you, she could persuade and demand a casting director see her talent. Lee coached and managed leads for HBO, Sony, Columbia, Disney, HBO, I said that, CBS, NBC, ABC, Showtime, TNT, there's a lot here. Lifetime, Disney Channel, New Line Cinema, Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, Fox, Family, WB, 20th Century Fox, Universal, and there's actually some more than others, but I won't go into them. Lee was a lover of beauty. The industry caused Lee to be a nomad, often living some of the time in Texas and part of the other time in Los Angeles. But regardless, she always made a home for herself with her distinct style and love for antiques. She loved old things. They were treasures to her. From the little boxes of Italian, the little boxes to large Italian antiques, Lee would always manage to find a place for her treasures. In fact, I remember the first time I saw her apartment, filled to the brim with all of her collections. She glowed as she would show me every piece, every painting, gift, or antique. Often, when she was landlocked, she would ask one of her traveling actors to bring something home from their trip. I was in Italy for a couple of days, and she wanted me to bring her one of those Venetian masquerade masks. I told her, Lee, I'm not in Venice, I'm in Rome. And after I tore the entire city apart looking for that Venetian mask, I still couldn't find it. After spending most of the afternoon in Florence, I eventually found a ceramic mask. They kind of looked like a Venetian masquerade mask. And I was so excited that I found it. But I almost missed my bus in the process. I wrapped it carefully. I was so proud of my find. When I was able to finally give it to her, she said, "Oh, this color won't work for my interiors. Give it to someone else." But that was Lee, right? She always had her opinion, and you weren't going to tell her otherwise. Yes, she was a character. While working with a casting director, she once had a director insist that she should play a role in his next film. She was perfect for the part. But we all know that little lady with a big voice could command a room. Of course, she refused. And that unforgettable voice. When she met the voice of all voices, James Earl Jones, he was even impressed and had to tell her so. Behind all their glamour and grit, Lee was a simple gal who loved animals, children, and gardening. She was at home in heels and diamonds just as much as flip-flops and a gardening hat. She also loved the country and being outside. She loved critters, cows, goats, chickens. A couple of months ago, my father-in-law had started raising goats, and I sent her a video of his first baby goat. Oh, she wanted that goat. All right, John? In fact, she sent a text to me from the hospital. You know, I want a baby goat for my birthday, she said. It's true. I've got it on my phone. I can show it to you. As a grandmother, Lee was over the top, doing goofy things for and with her grandchildren, from creating Play-Doh people to sitting on the floor playing Legos. Lee found utter delight being around her grandchildren. She wasn't just a birthday or Christmas kind of Mimi. Lee was a random gift giver. When she would see something that reminded her of one of her kids or her grandkids, she would immediately buy it and send it on to them. One of her favorite things to send her granddaughter Truth was Crazy Socks. Occasionally she would show up on set with one of her grandkids in tow, just so she could show them off and maybe they could meet a star. Lee was a patriot. She was so proud to be an American. She honored the military. She often shared posts on social media and championed causes such as Wounded Warrior. But she also was a friend. We never met a stranger, and she was a great storyteller. In fact, I've heard several, many times over. She would just repeat them over and over and over again, but it was always great. But most of all, she cared. Christina told me a story of a lady that she recently befriended in Utah. She had gone through a battle of breast cancer and she didn't feel feminine. Lee promptly grabbed her and took her to the mall to buy scarves and wigs. The lady told Christina, "She made me feel pretty again." And I couldn't have gotten through it without her. She was strong. Lee drove herself to the hospital that Saturday after a slight attack before the surgery. She told me she didn't want anyone knowing. Lee refused to be seen as weak. She fought it all her life, and she wasn't about to ditch that image now. When I received the news, there was a lot of people called. But what I found astounding was that everyone that I spoke with had a dream attached to this amazing lady. She had a unique and personal relationship with each one of them. Through the shock and emotions that expressed their unique connection, she was a dreamer and she encouraged their dreams, and she visualized with each one of them. One told me, "She was the only one that believed in my gift, and she pushed me to pursue it." Another had a novel that she encouraged him to write, a screenplay, a business, while others were simply devastated. How can I continue this without her? I spoke to her a day before the surgery, and she sent me a video of it snowing outside a hospital window. And even with a major procedure approaching, Lee was admiring God's beauty. I prayed for her to recover and to wake up. But honestly, I think she had a choice. And Lee chose heaven. Can you imagine Lee in heaven with all its beauty? Seriously. I think that the Bible has this to say about heaven. No ear has heard, no eye has seen what God has in store for his people. I can see her there, singing with the angels, telling her tall tales with Solomon, and maybe even arguing with Paul. But I bet she cannot wait to see each and every one of us there. Just like she was so enthralled to tell me about each one of her collectibles. She cannot wait to give us all the grand tour. Lee was a believer. As I kept tabs on her recovery after surgery, I spoke to John on Wednesday, and he simply sent me a text that said, "Lee passed at 3:23 this morning." I thought it strange and interesting. 323 seemed like a familiar number combination. I know more than anything, Lee would want me to share this with you. You see, as a believer, you're probably familiar with the Romans Road. It starts off, the first scripture is Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and fall short of God's glorious standard. Lee was far from perfect, and there's no way any of us can approach God. The second verse says in Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. 5:8 says, but God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were yet sinners. He provided a way for us to get to God. And the fourth verse, Romans 10:9 says, for if you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Believing in your heart makes you right with God. And the last and final verse says, for anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. If you want to talk to me further after the service, please do, and I can share the Romans Road with you. It's difficult, honestly, to cover Lee's life with just a few paragraphs. She made us all laugh with her antics. She drove us all a little crazy. We can all admit that. But she was self-determined, ambitious, a fighter, a dreamer, and a hometown girl with stars in her eyes. Lee was the oldest of 5 children. She was survived by her companion John Wester, her 2 children Todd Peterson, his wife Selma, and children Preston and Ashley, her daughter Christina Hipman, husband Dan Hipman, and daughter Truth. Her 4 siblings, Deborah, Renee, Pamela, and Mitch, along with so many other relatives and friends that she called family. Lee joins her beloved mother and father along with many other loved ones in heaven. And we can take comfort and know that by the scriptures we will see Lee again. Finally, Lee is a coach. I'm a part of an actors group that Lee was running before she passed, and we've continued that. It's kind of difficult now without her, but we met on Thursday and we were sharing voice messages that she had left each of us. It was really great. But she still is a coach. In fact, you may say Lee is even cheering us on. She's finished her race, but she still is a cheerleader, and she still is our coach. Hebrews 12:1 says, since we are all surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run the race of perseverance marked out for us. The Greek word nephos, translated as clouds, has an additional meaning that is very exciting when understood in its context. The ancient classical Greek times, there was, the word clouds was used to describe the highest seats in the bleachers of the stadium. I think Lee is up there. And she wouldn't want us to be sad for her, even though we miss her. She wants us to run our race so that she can see us again and give us an incredible grand tour.
I'm really happy that all of you came today. I hope I get a chance to talk to every one of you. This is a unique blend of people. We've got family, friends, industry people, and I think it's representative of my mom's world that she is, that all of those things would come together in this funky little cool place that we call the Village here. And I want to tell one story, and that's just because my mom did love old things, and John is one of the things that she loved. But from her antiques to small town to everything, but one of my favorite memories from high school is I had this cat, and his name was Boo Kitty, and he was a big black fuzzy cat, and she renamed that cat Thriller. The cat's name was not Thriller. The cat's name was Boo Kitty. And she had a bad habit of renaming people's pets. I don't know if any of you ever experienced that. And so this cat it was freezing cold. We lived in this super old house because she liked old things. It didn't matter that it was freezing cold inside. And so she and I are piled in the same bed with blankets and an electric blanket on top, trying to stay warm. And she wakes up and the cat is kneading the electrodes on the electric blanket. Yeah. And there are sparks flying across the bed. And her hair is standing up on end like this. And she screams. And she's trying to get the cat. Well, the cat is warm and cozy and happy. And so she wakes me up. Of course, I'm terrified. And the room is like glowing from this lightning across the bed. And she's like, we're going to get electrocuted. We're going to get electrocuted if she had been, And so, but she's sitting there like, and I just kicked the cat off the bed. And then, so from that point on, the cat was a bane to her existence. During a storm, the cat got on the roof and wouldn't come down, so she's out in the middle of the night with a broom, And so for some of you, those pictures of Lee may not exist, but that was just kind of our world. And I am really interested into getting, particularly to know some of you, Benjamin, and some of you guys that were part of her industry world, because that's not really a world I identify with much. And so it's really interesting to hear the stories, because I grew up with her in that force, and all of that was my mom. And to hear the stories of how she used that to help people get jobs and to do things, that's really super cool. One of the things that Benjamin shared with me, he's like, she was on the forefront. Nobody had really done what she was doing with Texas actors. And I had no idea. Some of y'all may have not had any idea. And so it's really cool to get to know more about my mom. One of the things that I wanted to tell you all, because a lot of people, there's a question, well, why didn't she tell people, why did she choose the things that she did? Part of it is that, she wanted to be strong for everybody always, and when she was weak, she didn't feel like she could. But to be honest, I think part of it was very much what Benjamin said. She was in a good place. She loved God. She had good relationships. She had worked through a lot of the things that she felt like she needed to work through. And when she and I were talking before she had this decision, because at first she was going to go with quality over quantity. I'm not going to have this surgery, and if I have a month, I have a month, and if I have 3 weeks, whatever. And then she decided to go with the surgery. I'm like, Mom, I'll do whatever you want, support you however I can. And she said, well, Christina, regardless of the outcome, it's positive. And that was her going into the surgery. She knew that regardless of how things went, that it was going to be positive. And so I don't know if that answers the question mark for some of you, or if you know people that are like, I really don't understand how things transpired like that, then that may be of comfort, and you can share that with other people as well, is just knowing that.
I was taught a long time ago that I do not need to use a microphone as a Marine, as a soldier. So I may wander back there, but if you can't hear me in the back, I'll talk louder. I met Lee in the most unique way. I was on a website called Senior People Meet. Well, there was a senior person that saw me holding my brand new grandson. And she put her crosshairs right there. That was Lee. We communicated back and forth for a while. I had to fly down to Dallas, get over to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, to meet some of my soldiers who were coming back from Africa. Lee and I met at the airport. We spent that day together and the next day before I had to fly back home. Next thing I knew, hey, John, find me a place to live up there. What? I found an apartment. 2 days later, she called me and said, I'm here. I went over to the apartment and then there was this huge moving van. Okay, who's going to help you move? Aren't you? I spent about 4 or 5 hours unloading everything I could handle. Then I told her, get some movers done to load the rest. And I went home for 3 days with back surgery. She was a hoot. With that deep voice, there was a problem in communication. One of the reasons why I thought at the time that we could never work as a couple, I got tired of saying, what did you say? Would you repeat that over and over again? But for some reason it worked. Ben commented about Lee loving old things. Well, I'm the old thing she loved. One of the first things she did when it got to be colder weather was play a little trick on me. I have a neighbor who has an autistic son. Well, Lee decided that she was going to do something different for John now that we had the first big snowfall. She came over to my house and did an angel in the snow right in my front yard. And then she dressed it with a bikini and lingerie. However, my neighbor was curious about what Lee was doing when she left, so he came over to check it out with his son. I got a phone call from my neighbor, John. There's a snow angel with a bikini and lingerie in your front yard. Oh, I forgot to mention, he's very good Mormon. He wasn't sure how to handle that, but he did a good job. Lee, as you know, loved farming. She loved to be outdoors. And when she saw where I live on an acre of ground that I inherited from my parents after they died. She constantly wanted me to, A, convert the barn into an apartment so she could live in the apartment. No. How about the garage? No. How about that front bedroom? No. I just wasn't ready. I just lost my wife. And I just wasn't quite ready for that yet. Well, I don't have a washer and dryer in the apartment I'm living in now. Can I come over and do my laundry at your place? Of course you can. She'd come over and do the laundry, do my laundry, vacuum all the floors, mop the floors. Hell, I couldn't complain. You know, she was doing more for me than I was doing for her. Because she cared about me. Just like she cared about everyone here. She was a very unique individual. In August, things changed between us. We started growing very attached to each other. I took her to the Marine Corps birthday ball we had up in Salt Lake. I took her to a formal dining out that we had for Special Forces. We had about 6 episodes where we really enjoyed each other's company at these events. But one of them, we had a chaplain that was assigned to us. He had designed this special medallion for the wives and the significant others of our Special Forces unit. He called it the Order of Ruth. It consisted of a medal on a green ribbon that went around the neck. At the dining out that night, every soldier at the tables had one of those for the woman he was with that night. I looked at Lee and said, will you please stand up? That was one of the few times I ever saw a tear go down her cheek. She was so impressed with that. She wanted to support the military. She got involved locally with my Special Forces chapter. When my chapter officers found out about Lee's passing, and they knew I was coming down here, each military unit has what we call a commander's point. And When we had the memorial for Lee up in Murray, the commander of the 19th group came over, his wife came over, and presented Christina with a coin from the 19th. Well, this coin that I'm giving Christina is a coin from our Special Forces chapter. We're made up of 130 former Green Berets, and it was unanimous. They wanted Lee to have this, or Christina to have this, for the I want to relate a story to you about when my wife passed away. She was in a medical coma at the hospital. I sat next to her for 2 hours. I got up to leave for a minute. Her brother sat down. She woke up and looked at him and said, "Dave, I love you." Dave called me into the room, and I was able to get next to her. We said, "I love you" to each other. We kissed when she was gone. Why do I mention that? Lee called me the morning before she went into surgery. We talked. The last words we exchanged to each other was, "I love you." That was the last words I got to hear from Lee. She was a beautiful woman. I will always cherish knowing her. I will cherish the fact that she introduced me to so many wonderful people here and up in Utah. I will miss her. But I've got a new adopted daughter, granddaughter, and I'm going to relish them the rest of my life. Thank you. And I want you to notice, I did adopt.